Welcome back to MHS, Midnight Horror Stories. Today's episode is a special one. Thanks to the support and love from all of you, I've had the chance to listen to many spine-chilling and unforgettable stories, real experiences shared by our very own listeners. In this episode, I'll be sharing a few of those stories sent in via email. For privacy reasons, names and locations have been changed to protect the identities of those involved. If you have your own eerie, mysterious, or terrifying story that you'd like to see brought to life in animated form, don't hesitate to send it to horrorstories3s.com@gmail.com. Thank you sincerely for trusting this channel with your stories. My story begins on July 20th, 2024, when I was 24 years old. After living with my parents for a long time, I decided to return to the city where I was born and raised to find the freedom I wanted. However, the start was not easy. I had only $0 in my hand and no car. The situation was so difficult that I had to use the last of my money, $80, to take an Uber back to the city. The first few days back in the city were a challenge. I had to live on the streets for a week with no stable place to stay. At night, I could barely sleep because any small noise would startle me awake, no matter where I tried to hide. Luckily, a close childhood friend agreed to let me stay with him. The others I tried to contact refused to help. Only he and his dad were willing. The neighborhood we grew up in was a complex place with a high crime rate, full of gangs, homeless people, and addicts. My friend convinced his dad to let me stay in their garage. It wasn't the best place to live because it lacked a lot of things, but to me, it was a godsend at the time. Both my friend and his dad were worried about me living in the garage because his mom didn't agree. To be honest, I was also worried because the area was quite dangerous, but I chose to live alone to have my freedom instead of living under my parents' control. The garage had no electricity. I had to buy many power banks to charge my phone and recharge them at work because my friend's dad couldn't afford to pay for electricity for the garage. The garage also didn't have a bathtub to shower, no hot water, or a heater to withstand the cold winter. I had to get a gym membership to have a place to shower. Luckily, the garage had a toilet and a sink, even though the water was freezing cold. I only used it to wash my hands and face. My friend's family had prepared a lot of blankets, food, and water for me, so I would have enough energy to go to work. They also set a curfew, telling me not to come home too late so my friend's mom wouldn't find out. I had to sneak in through the back door on the right side because she never went to the garage. They trusted me with a key. They were also worried about my safety and treated me like their own family. Just having a roof over my head and living independently made me happy. My friend's dad was an extremely kind person and had known me since I was a child. My friend's mom didn't agree to let me stay, but he and his dad risked everything for our friendship and trust. So, she had no idea I had been there for 8 months. At first, I only planned to stay for 2 months, but they saw that I was genuinely trying to contribute, so they let me stay. The only conditions were that I had to have a job and help with the rent and keep the garage clean. To me, that was a very fair deal. The garage was my friend's dad's old wood shop from when we were kids. The alleyway behind the house was a dark alley with no fence. It had a window and a door on the right, which I guessed was an emergency exit. Gangs and addicts often hung out in this alley. My friend's parents and neighbors constantly had to deal with trouble from these people: fighting, littering, vandalism, and many other serious problems. The police only came if someone called. Unfortunately, my friend moved out. He and his girlfriend had saved up to rent their own apartment. Because of that, we saw each other less often. But he would still visit and buy me food when I was unemployed and had no money. I was lucky to get a full-time job at a warehouse thanks to a friend from college who referred me. I worked there for 8 months. In the 6th month, I experienced one of the most terrifying moments of my life. My friend's parents were away visiting family for a while. One night, I finished my usual 12-hour shift. Exhausted, I collapsed onto the bed, dozed off, and woke up at 1 a.m. I suddenly realized I had forgotten to lock the back door after taking out the trash. Luckily, no one had broken in while I was sleeping. I quickly ran to lock both locks. When I lived there, I often used headphones to play Call of Duty Mobile. But that night, my headphones ran out of battery, and I didn't want to wait for them to charge, so I turned the speakers up to full volume. This was my second mistake. My friend and his dad always told me to be quiet and not to make loud noises because it would attract suspicious people in the back alley. They often hung out there, and a small reason was all it took to start something. But I had looked through the window and saw that the alley was empty for 2 hours, so I thought it was safe. While playing the game at full volume, I suddenly heard footsteps from somewhere. It sounded like 3 people talking. All 3 had bikes and were rummaging through the trash cans for bottles and cans. I immediately stopped playing, my heart pounding. I knew I was in trouble as soon as the 3 men stopped talking and started whispering to each other. A few seconds of silence passed. Then one of them started knocking on the door repeatedly. I didn't dare to open it or answer. The door had a small peephole, so I decided to look and see who it was. There were 3 people, 2 with shaved heads and covered in tattoos, and the other wearing a hoodie. Suddenly, they started yelling, telling me to open the door and saying, "I know you're in there. We just want to talk." My soul left my body as they started kicking and using their full body weight to pound on the door. The door shook violently. I quickly grabbed my friend's baseball bat and got ready to defend myself. I didn't want to call the police because my friend's mom didn't know I lived there, and my friend's parents were away. I kept thinking the neighbors would hear and call the police, but unfortunately, no one did. It was very late, and everyone was asleep. It was just me and those 3 gang members. I called my friend repeatedly, and he finally answered. I panicked and told him everything. He had to go to work early, so I had woken him up. He told me to find a place to hide with the baseball bat and only call the police if they broke in. He also said he would come with his brother if the situation got worse because he lived pretty close by. I was terrified when I heard a scratching sound. I realized these guys had pocket knives. Surprisingly, they didn't try to break the window near the door. I guess they didn't want to make more noise by breaking glass. That made me even more scared. It was 3 of them against me alone. I just prayed they would give up and leave. An hour passed, which felt like an eternity. Finally, they gave up. The door was too solid for them to break. I sighed in relief, but couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. I called my friend again and told him they were gone. Luckily, it was a Friday, so I had the weekend off. My friend came over the next morning. He told me to come with him and showed me how the entire back door was covered in knife scratches. He had to tell his dad about it. The door's paint was destroyed. They were upset, but accepted my apology. They told me to be extremely careful and not to make any noise at night. They explained that they were trying to break in and find anything valuable to trade for drugs. The next night, I was still scared, afraid that the 3 men would come back, but I never saw or heard anything about them again. I thought that maybe someone had called the police, or they knew they had failed and wouldn't come back. I ended up losing my job at the warehouse because business slowed down. I couldn't find another job anywhere else. My friend's dad said he had tried to help me as much as he could, but I needed to go back to my parents. I wasn't mad at them. They had helped me so much. If it weren't for them, I might have been living on the streets. After 8 months of living there, I decided to go home. To this day, I still wonder what would have really happened if I had forgotten to lock the door that night. I might not be here to tell this crazy story. That moment still haunts me now, as if it just happened yesterday. The following horror story I'm about to tell is real. It happened to my 2 best friends, Neelam and Alita, at their workplace in the fall of 2012 in Glasgow, Scotland. The air here turns cold as soon as the sun sets. That's typical of autumn in Glasgow, with a biting cold that invades every corner. Around 6 p.m., my 2 friends, both in their early 20s at the time, were working as cosmetologists at a beauty salon in the city's West End. They were getting ready to close up and go home when a group of 3 rather large men wearing ski masks, burst in and pushed the salon door open. They were carrying bulging blue plastic bags. The men then closed the large roller shutter in the front, locking Neelam and Alita inside. Both of my friends were quite stunned and didn't know what to say or do. The men started yelling and asking where the salon owner lived. The owner was a woman. My two friends answered with trembling voices that they didn't know, which was true because the shop owner hardly ever came to the shop and only managed it from afar. He would only come directly when it was really necessary, even though both girls were very scared. They thought that the men would leave after knowing that the shop owner wasn't there. However, things became much scarier when the three men suddenly pulled out hammers and duct tape. They took Neelam and Alita to the back of the salon, tied their hands and feet, and gagged them with duct tape. They were forced to sit on wheeled chairs and were taped to the chairs. The thugs discussed what to do next, whether to wait for the owner to show up or leave. The girls were so terrified they were stiff, and they hoped the men would leave. Neelam was especially worried because she had a cold at the time. Her nose was completely blocked, and the duct tape over her mouth was extremely uncomfortable. Her glasses also slid down her face from struggling, making it even harder for her to see. Neelam tried to tell the men to take off the tape because she had a cold, but she could only mumble because her mouth was taped so tightly. One of the men yelled at her to shut up. Neelam tried not to cry, knowing it would only make things worse. Alita was still in shock, but was mainly worried about Neelam and prayed that the thugs would leave. She also tried to speak, but couldn't. At this point, Neelam was breathing very heavily and erratically through her nose. Luckily, after a few minutes of observing the girls and the salon, the men decided to leave through the front door, but not before destroying the cash register and some mirrors with their hammers. They also smashed some of the tools in the shop. Surprisingly, they didn't steal anything. The men then left the salon, leaving Neelam and Alita tied up and gagged in the back. The two girls struggled for a long time to get out of the tape. Alita managed to move her chair close to some hair tools and eventually used a pair of scissors to cut the ropes on their hands and feet, then remove the tape from both of their mouths. As soon as Neelam was freed, they immediately called the police. When the police arrived, they gave the two girls warm blankets and took them to give their statements. The entire incident actually only lasted about 20 minutes, even though it felt much longer to the girls. Luckily, neither of them was physically hurt, but the shock left a big and lasting impact for a while. The men were never caught. Neelam and Alita participated in suspect identification, but couldn't be sure who the thugs were because they were wearing masks. Both of my friends quit their jobs at the salon right after this event and moved on to work elsewhere. They are now both very successful and have put that terrifying incident behind them. They never found out what the men wanted from the owner and are very grateful that she wasn't there at the time. Otherwise, things could have been much worse. Of course, they had their suspicions about the owner after the horrifying event, but they were just grateful to be alive and healthy, to have left that salon forever, and they are both very happy with their lives now. It has been weeks, but that night still lingers in my mind as if it just happened yesterday. I still remember the cold, exhausting feeling as I drove down Highway 61. But what I can't forget is that man. I never imagined that what seemed like an ordinary encounter would turn out to be the beginning of a nightmare. The gas light came on. I only had enough gas for about 10 more miles. My phone's map showed only one gas station about 11 miles away. I hoped I had enough fuel to make the trip. 10 minutes later, I saw a faint light ahead, and an old gas station appeared. I pulled up to a pump, swiped my credit card, started pumping gas, and looked around. Besides my car, there was an old, dark blue pickup truck parked in the corner of the station, mostly hidden by the shadows. That's when I noticed a figure standing near the blue truck, a tall man wearing a dark jacket. I tried to act normal, focusing on pumping gas, but my heart started pounding. The shadowy figure started moving toward me, slowly, step by step. I could hear his shoes crunching on the gravel. The gas nozzle wasn't even full yet, but all I wanted to do was jump in my car and speed away immediately. "Good evening, friend." The man's voice was deep and hoarse. He stepped into the light, his face long and gaunt, with stubble and deep-set eyes under the brim of his hat. "Are you driving alone?" I nodded, not wanting to talk, but also not wanting to seem scared. "Yeah, I'm heading home. My car broke down. I need to get to Millfield. It's only about 30 miles from here. Could you give me a ride?" I looked at him, trying to size him up. He was half a head taller than me, with broad shoulders and large hands. There was something bulging in his jacket pocket, and I didn't want to know what it was. "Sorry, I'm not going through Millfield. I'm going the other way." The man's smile disappeared. "Millfield is on Highway 61. You're on this road. I'm turning off at the next intersection." The man was silent for a moment, his eyes staring intently at me. "There's no intersection ahead. You're lying." The gas nozzle had stopped. I slowly removed the nozzle from my car, closed the gas cap, not taking my eyes off him. "I really need to get to Millfield tonight. It's important." "Just a short ride." The man took another step toward me. I shook my head, moving towards my car door. "I can't. Sorry." He reached into his jacket pocket, but instead of pulling out something dangerous, he pulled out a wad of cash. "I'll pay you $200, just for 30 miles. "No thanks." I opened my car door, quickly sliding into the driver's seat. He put his hand on my car door, stopping me from closing it. $500. "Buddy, I really need help." "I'm really sorry, sir," I said, trying to pull the door shut. The man wouldn't let go. Instead, he leaned down, his face just inches from mine. The smell of whiskey and cigarettes wafted from his breath. "Listen, I don't want any trouble, but I have to get to Millfield tonight. Understand?" I was about to answer when another pair of headlights shone into the gas station. A police patrol car slowly pulled in. The man immediately let go of my car door and backed up a few steps. The police car parked, and an officer got out. The man's demeanor instantly changed. He became relaxed and friendly. "Is there a problem?" the officer asked, his gaze moving between me and the man. "No problem at all, officer. I was just asking for directions to Millfield." The officer nodded, but I noticed he was observing the man closely. "Could I see some ID, sir?" The man hesitated for a second, then said, "I left it in my truck." "Let me get it." He turned his back and walked toward the blue pickup truck. That's when the officer moved closer to me, lowering his voice just enough to be heard. "Are you willing to give him a ride?" I shook my head. "I'm really not going through Millfield." "I see. Better safe than sorry." His eyes quickly shifted towards the truck. Suddenly, the truck's engine roared to life. The blue pickup truck sped out of the gas station at a crazy speed. I stood there, stunned. He just said his car broke down, and now he was speeding away like nothing was wrong. The officer quickly reported it over his radio, his voice tense as he described the truck and requested backup. He turned back to me, his eyes more serious than ever. I recounted every detail of my encounter with the man. The officer used his radio again, requesting a lookout for the truck, suspecting foul play. For me, he sent another colleague to escort me home to ensure my safety. 2 months passed. Life slowly returned to normal, but I couldn't completely shake the uneasy feeling from that night. One evening, I was watching the news as usual. An image of a familiar face suddenly appeared on the screen, making my blood run cold. Deep-set eyes, a gaunt face. It was exactly the man from the gas station that night. Stuart Welch, 45 years old, serial killer. He murdered 5 victims in 3 years using the same method, faking a broken-down car, asking for a ride, then overpowering them and taking them to a remote location. I sat motionless, every detail flooding back. The news anchor continued. He was caught thanks to a report from a lucky witness who escaped 2 months ago. So, I could have been the 6th victim if that police officer hadn't shown up at the right time. If I'd agreed to give him a ride, things might have... I turned off the TV, sitting in silence. I was right to trust my gut feeling that murders often happen in deserted places. I never thought I'd almost become living proof of that statement. Since that night, I've never dared to drive alone on empty roads. I'm Ricky, 35, still single, and just trying to find some peace after everything life's thrown at me. My new place is on the edge of a quiet little town, tucked right up next to the forest. The vibe here is totally different from the packed, noisy spots I used to live in. The houses are spread out, mostly older folks living here, just looking for some peace in their golden years. The house is simple, but comfy, with a little backyard facing the woods and a dirt road that takes you into town. Across from my place is this old house with peeling paint and a wooden fence stacked with layers, making it look even older. The guy who owned it was this guy in his 50s named Gavin. Found that out when I said hi to the neighbors. I spotted Gavin a few times, not because I was nosy, just wanted to know when he was around so I could say hey. On the afternoon of day 3 after moving in, I swung by Gavin's place to say hi and share some cake. Gavin opened the door looking awkward, but he lit up real quick when I introduced myself and said hey. He invited me in, and while he sounded friendly, his voice had this weird shake to it. I walked in and noticed his place was pretty messy. The furniture was old, and it felt kind of stuffy with no natural light. I plopped down on the old sofa, and Gavin brought me a glass of orange juice. I smiled, grabbed it, took a sip, but then had to stop right away. There was a long, yellow hair floating in the drink. I tried to ignore the weirdness, set the glass down, and looked up at him. I asked him a bit about his life, and Gavin said he was also on his own, like the neighbors, and that he was fine with everything for now. As Gavin was talking, he turned away and suddenly blasted the music really loud, the high-pitched tune shaking the whole place. I couldn't hide my surprise, and Gavin busted out laughing, his face all red and puffed up, saying that was his way of chilling out. I started feeling disrespected, so I politely said bye and left. That was the one and only time I went to Gavin's place and talked to him. Every move Gavin made, every look in his eyes, just screamed weird eccentricity. Even though I tried not to judge, I couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't like any of the other older folks I'd met. One time when I was coming back from town, I walked by Gavin's place and saw a young girl standing at the window and waving at me. But the way she looked was off, way too excited for just a random encounter. I clearly remembered Gavin saying he lived alone, so maybe this was his daughter stopping by for a visit. I smiled back, telling myself not to overthink it, but I still had a weird feeling about the whole thing. Then one night, I couldn't sleep. The sound of stuff crashing, furniture being smashed, and kids crying loudly just left me feeling totally confused. I went to the window to check it out, and I guessed the noise was coming from Gavin's place. I didn't want to get involved in other people's family drama, but those sounds really made me uneasy. A few days later, I saw another girl at Gavin's place. She was by the window too, looking all rushed, waving at me way too eagerly, like she was trying to get my attention. I was pretty sure this wasn't the same girl I saw last time. The girl's eyes didn't look happy. Instead, she seemed worried and in a rush about something. The confusion in my mind just kept growing, but I kept telling myself I was probably overthinking it. Once again, I gave her a quick hello and then just took off. The third time, I saw a girl totally different from the other two, with shiny golden hair. She just stood there, waving her hand slowly, not saying a word. This time I couldn't calm down anymore, so I decided to go over and ask. But after I took a few steps, Gavin came out of the house, looked at me, and nodded his chin. I was gonna ask about the girls, but when I pointed to the window, she was gone. Who were these girls? Why did they keep showing up and disappearing? The questions kept swirling in my head, sticking with me day and night, making it hard to focus on anything else. I hit peak unease when I saw this skinny, pale girl with cuts on her arms standing in front of his house. Seeing that made it impossible for me to sit still. I decided to call the cops and tell them about all the weird stuff I'd seen. The police showed up pretty quickly. As they knocked on the guy's door, I stood at my window, heart pounding. At first, he answered the door all calm, but when the police asked to come in and check, he got all tense. The police searched the house, and what they found freaked both me and them out. Up on the second floor, they found 3 girls locked up. All 3 were chained up, their bodies really skinny, covered in old and new wounds. Those girls were the ones I'd seen through the window. What was even worse and totally disgusting was that the 3 girls were the victims of Gavin's kidnapping, keeping them locked up and abusing them for the past 10 years. The little girl was Gavin's daughter with the second girl he had kidnapped. I stood outside, frozen, watching the police take that bastard to the car. His face was no longer the cheerful or confused look like the first day we met. It was just cold, blank, and creepy. I went back home, but the images of those girls, their pleading eyes, and the creepy sounds from the night before kept popping up in my head. All 3 of them had called out to me, full of hope, joy, panic, and desperation. I can't stop thinking that if I hadn't called the police, they would have had to keep going through that pain for who knows how many more years. Based on a true case that once shocked the entire United States, this story tells of 3 young women who were illegally held captive for a decade by a man in a house in Cleveland, Ohio. The first victim was Michelle Knight, who was 21 years old at the time. A year later, 17-year-old high school student Amanda Berry went missing on her way home from work. The last was Gina DeJesus, who was only 14 when she lost contact with her family. For 10 long years, the 3 women lived under strict control, completely isolated from the outside world. Despite the unimaginable conditions, they never lost hope for freedom. That resilience was eventually rewarded when one of them found a chance to call for help from a neighbor, an act that led to their rescue. The case was soon brought to light, and the perpetrator received a harsh sentence, putting an end to a dark chapter in the victims' lives. Yet what is even more admirable is that these 3 women chose to move forward, rising above their past and becoming symbols of resilience, an inspiration to millions around the world. Some memories, no matter how hard you try to bury them, still find a way to creep back on quiet nights. The story I'm about to tell happened 15 years ago at Jefferson High School, but even now, I can't sleep soundly when I hear a knock at the window at night. I'm David. In 2008, I was a high school senior from a tough background. I spent most of my after-school hours in the school's computer lab because my family couldn't afford a computer of our own. And that's where I met Luke. Luke was my age but a year behind in school because he'd moved around so much. He always sat in the corner of the room, shoulders hunched. His messy brown hair hid his eyes behind thick glasses. His gray t-shirt was faded, his jeans had stains, and his white sneakers were yellowed. Luke's family had fallen apart the year before, after his parents had a loud fight right outside the school that everyone witnessed. After that, Luke became even shyer and more isolated. He spent hours in front of the computer screen, typing steadily, as if searching for a world where he could belong. I recognized that look because I'd been through it myself. The first year after my dad's accident, I also wore old clothes, always kept my head down to avoid eye contact, wishing I could be invisible. I was lucky that I still had a complete family. We got through that tough time together. Maybe that's why I felt empathy for Luke from the first time I met him. That day, just like any other, Luke and I were studying in the computer lab. A little while later, heavy footsteps dragged across the floor. Travis walked over, followed by Jake and Connor. They were a notorious trio known for being bullies. Travis had a muscular build, short blonde hair almost buzzed to his scalp, and sharp blue eyes. Travis stood right behind Luke, with Jake and Connor on either side. "Hey nerd, do my homework for me," Travis ordered. Luke didn't answer, continuing to type. Before Luke transferred to the school, I was Travis's target. I understood that feeling, the helplessness of being threatened and not being able to do anything. Travis ordered Luke to do his homework for him. He snatched Luke's book and threw it to the floor when he saw him refuse. I stood up, quickly stepping to stand between them. "Travis, leave him alone." He scoffed, tilting his head to look at me. Before leaving, Travis still kicked the table leg and warned that he'd be back. I turned back to see Luke picking up his book and continuing to study as if nothing had happened. After school, Luke and I walked home together. I said a few things, but Luke only responded with slight smiles. At a small alley, Luke would turn in. He looked at me. "Thanks. Sometimes I think about doing something to make them stop." "What do you mean?" I asked, confused, but Luke had already turned and walked away. 2 days later, we were in class when the alarm blared throughout the school. The principal's voice echoed over the loudspeaker. "All students and teachers immediately initiate lockdown procedures. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Immediately, Mr. Johnson locked the classroom door and pulled the blinds to cover the windows. We all huddled in the dark corner, our cell phones lit up, messages from friends in other classes constantly coming in. Someone in a mask in the parking lot, they said, "There's blood. Travis didn't come home last night. His parents are looking for him." The whispers made the situation even more chaotic. My heart pounded. The next message from an 11th grade student made the blood in my veins run cold. The police found Travis in his own car's trunk. He's dead. We sat silently in the dark for 2 hours. When the alarm finally stopped and the doors opened, Mr. Johnson, with a pale face, announced a serious incident and that the school would be closed for the next week. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of Travis, who had bullied Luke just 2 days before, now dead in his own car's trunk, kept replaying in my mind. Around 2 a.m., I heard a soft knock at my window. I walked to the window, pulling the curtain back a little. Luke was standing outside, his gray t-shirt soaked with sweat, his face pale under the streetlight. But what gave me chills was the smile I'd never seen on Luke's face before. When he saw me, Luke pointed at the window latch. I opened the window. "Luke, what are you doing here? I need to tell you about what happened at school today." Luke's voice was different. Luke looked around and then whispered, "That masked person was me." I felt all the air get sucked out of my lungs. "What are you saying?" "Travis will never hurt anyone again." Luke stepped closer to the window, his eyes gleaming in the dark. "Did you see? He looked so peaceful in the trunk." "Luke, what did you do?" "I waited for him in the parking lot." Luke chuckled softly. He even laughed, saying that I finally dared to confront him. But when I pulled out the knife, "Stop talking. Do you know?" When Travis pleaded, his voice trembled just like mine every day at school. Luke looked me straight in the eyes. Now he understands what fear feels like. "Luke, you need to turn yourself in. I'm not done yet. Jake and Connor will understand too. And all the others." Luke stepped back from the window. He disappeared into the darkness. I stood there for a few minutes, my hands trembling. Then I picked up the phone and dialed 911. At the request of the police, I recounted all the information I knew. The next morning, Luke didn't come to school. The police found him at home with blood-stained clothes and a knife in his desk drawer. They also found a list, with Jake and Connor at the top, followed by the names of 15 other students. I'll never forget the line Luke wrote in his diary. "I don't want to be a bad person, but I'm so tired of enduring." Luke was arrested on charges of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit terrorism. He confessed to everything without showing any remorse. The news spread throughout the school. I never saw Luke again. But every night, I remember Luke's face. My bedroom window is always locked tight at night now.
"Mommy, can a child live in a trash can?" That was an innocent question from my son, but it haunted me ever since I learned the story of a monstrous mother. I am a single mother, living with my 5-year-old son in a small neighborhood. Everyone here is very friendly. except for the house right next to mine. I found out that the owner of that house is also a single mother named Hebe, with 5 young children, 4 daughters and a youngest son, who is the same age as my son. She was described by the neighbors as someone with a selfish lifestyle. I met her a few times, but my greetings were ignored and met with a very cold attitude. Several times, loud arguments could be heard coming from Hebe's house at night between her and another man. I guessed that he was the father of one of her 5 children, as they did not resemble each other. One day, I was busy preparing dinner in the kitchen and left my son to play alone in the living room. A moment later, the boy ran over and hugged my leg, saying, "Mommy." I replied to my son while still focusing on cooking, "What's wrong, sweetheart?" "Mom, can a child live in a trash can?" My son's innocent question made me laugh. If there are a lot of ugly bacteria, why would you want to live in there? "I don't want to, but the boy next door does." "Then you should advise your friend not to do that." I brushed off my son's question and quickly finished making dinner. After dinner, I worked while my son watched TV. When I glanced at my son, I was a bit surprised to see him watching images of trash cans. "Honey, what are you watching?" The boy didn't respond. His face was very pensive, and his eyes were fixed on the TV screen. "Are you trying to learn about something?" "Being inside there must be really cramped. And there are no candles, toys, or even a TV, Mom." My son's voice was very sad. "Who are you talking about?" "It is about the friend from next door." "There's no way that would happen, Mikey. Every baby deserves to be loved." I smiled, knowing my little boy had grown and had the sensitivity of a 5-year-old. I took my son to his room, kissed him goodnight, and then returned to my own room. I didn't go to sleep right away. I finished up some work first. About 10 minutes later, my son cried out loudly in a panic. I didn't have time to react before the boy opened the door, ran to me, and hugged me tightly while crying a lot. "Mom, please save him. He'll be hungry in the trash can." I look at my son in shock. I didn't rush to ask my son questions. Instead, I comforted him first. Once my son calmed down, he recounted everything that had happened. From losing his ball in the neighbor's backyard, he had planned to run in quickly and come back since no one was around. "I picked up a plastic bottle in the yard and threw it in the trash can, just as you told me. I saw him in the trash can." Hearing my son's story left me in shock and made me shudder. I immediately called the police because I was sure my son wasn't lying. From the information I gathered, the police had to visit Hebe's house 3 times before uncovering the horrifying truth. She denied having a son, constantly crying and pretending to be pitiful. In the shed in Hebe's backyard, the police found a trash can containing the body of her youngest son. Hebe took advantage of her sad circumstances to register for government assistance using her son's information. Hebe's children were very unfortunate as they received no care or attention from their own mother. Her youngest son died from a high fever that led to seizures and brain damage. After learning of her son's death, she didn't obtain a death certificate or bury him properly, and she didn't seem to grieve at all. Her selfishness and greed were even more disgusting as he'd continued to use her son's information to receive monthly benefits. She was sentenced to 2 years in prison, but her cold-bloodedness and insensitivity deserved to be locked up forever. It was heartbreaking for the little boy. That innocent soul deserved protection and love instead of being abandoned like that. How could a mother not love her own child? Did she really deserve to be called mom by her 5 children? This story is based on a true event that occurred in Rock Island, Illinois on July 25th, 2023. The police received the tip-off from a neighbor who claimed that the woman next door was hiding the long dead body of her son in her home. It took a long time for the police to uncover the truth about a selfish, irresponsible mother and her unfortunate little boy.
I'm Chasey, 28, and going to school to start a new job. My old job was fine and the pay was good, but something bad happened, so I decided to quit. About a year ago, because of the kind of job I had, I usually worked night shifts and got home early in the morning. I usually left my husband messages to let him know where I was. My husband always kept his phone ringer on loud so he could pick up if I called in an emergency. He told me plenty of times to switch jobs because it wasn't safe. If I'd just taken his word for it, I probably wouldn't have this story to tell you now. That night, I was driving home at 3 a.m. The car was almost out of gas. I was dead tired. My eyes were heavy, and my stomach was growling. I decided to swing by 7-Eleven to grab a snack. After grabbing a sandwich and a hot coffee, I sat down to eat at the store and made sure to snap a pic and send it to my husband. Once I started feeling more awake and comfy, I started paying more attention to my surroundings. I was startled when I locked eyes with a guy sitting at the table in the farthest corner. He had a black baseball cap pulled down low, covering almost half his face, but his cold, sharp blue eyes still stood out. He had on a baggy gray hoodie. His big hands kept slipping into his pockets, like he was trying to hide something. My whole body shook when I locked eyes with him, like he could see straight into my soul. Anxiety made my heart race, and I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling creeping up on me. The guy never took his eyes off me, and every little move he made had me feeling like danger was right around the corner. I stood up, trying to act as normal as possible, and walked over to the cashier, pretending to ask her where a few things were. The guy walked by and left the store, and I let out a big sigh of relief. I grabbed the stuff I asked the employee about to be polite and quickly left. As soon as I got in the car, I locked the door quickly and took off. After driving a bit, I suddenly smelled strong gasoline and started wondering if I messed something up while filling up earlier. The car drove a little further, then the gas light kept flashing and the speed started slowing down. Eventually, the car just stopped in the middle of the road. I was very confused and called my husband. My husband thought the fuel line might be the problem. Right away, I remembered this suspicious guy in the store earlier. I listened to my husband, quickly got out of the car, and ran to the nearest house to wait for him to pick me up. I looked around hoping to see something that could help. When I saw a house with a little light shining through the curtains, I rushed over to it, holding on to my last bit of hope. I felt my legs go weak, like they were about to give out from fear and panic. The lights in the house turned on, the door opened, and a man around 60 answered. I quickly explained my situation and asked him for help. The man looked at me for a few seconds, kind of cautious, then agreed. I felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my chest and started to calm my breathing. The first thing I did was send my location to my husband and thought about whether I should call the police or not. The man let me sit on the sofa in the living room. He asked if I was feeling better and said I could grab a glass of water if I wanted. I agreed and was really grateful to him, planning to ask his name when he came back. I looked around the house and it was pretty simple. The light where I was sitting was the only one on, while the rest of the place was dim, just barely lit. The guy turned around and I saw him drop something into the glass of water. From that sharp look, I could tell it wasn't just some regular seasoning. I was so shocked. My mouth was wide open, and my eyes were really wide, trying to take in everything I could. My heart, which had just slowed down not long ago, started racing again with fear from the new situation. I got up, opened the door, and ran out of that house. I heard the man's footsteps rushing after me. I ran toward the thick bushes, crawled inside, and curled up like a little animal. The man's footsteps echoed loud in the quiet night, and every step felt like it was hitting my heart, which was pounding like crazy. After a while, he cursed, went back into the house, and slammed the door. I took out my phone, one hand covering the light on the screen, the other sending my location to my husband. When I heard a car engine, I didn't dare step out until I heard my husband calling my name. I ran to him, jumped in the car, and only then could I finally cry, freak out, and let out all the emotions I'd been holding in. It took me a few days to calm down and hand in my resignation. My husband and I also moved to a safer neighborhood and made sure we were home before 11 p.m. That day I was both unlucky and lucky. I managed to survive run-ins with 2 guys in the same night.
That night, my favorite storytelling channel released a new video, and without hesitation, I clicked to listen right away. A senior student is walking home after finishing her shift at the local convenience store at 11 p.m. But she couldn't know that she would never make it home. Senior student working at a convenience store. How much that sounds like me, I muttered. The girl's boyfriend reported her missing to the police the following morning. The police, in cooperation with local volunteer teams, conducted an extensive search, and 2 days later, they found something. Immediately, the thing that came to my mind was a corpse. My heart began to race, and I slowed my pace. A red size 6.5 Nike shoe by the Lotus Lake. The boyfriend broke down in tears, certain that this shoe belonged to his girlfriend. I stopped, my eyes wide as I looked down at the red size 6.5 Nike shoe at my feet. Suddenly, the sound of a car speeding by sliced through the quiet night, startling me. It's just a coincidence, Kaylee. This brand of shoes is common. What student doesn't have a part-time job? I came up with reasons to dismiss the thought that this podcast was predicting my own death. My mind urged me to hurry home, but the next piece of information mentioned in the podcast made my body go stiff. Half a day after it was found, the police confirmed that the shoe belonged to Kaylee Johnson, the victim of the disappearance. Kaylee Johnson? I exclaimed. That was my name. What the hell is happening? I found it hard to believe, raising my phone to check the podcast I was following. I was listening to a podcast, and it was talking about my own murder. My heart raced even faster, and my whole body felt paralyzed as I read the title of that podcast. I walked and breathed heavily. A witness reported to the police about seeing a black Corolla near the scene on the evening the victim went missing. I took a deep breath, recalling the car that had just sped by. It was black, I think. No additional clues or bodies have been found yet. The police believe this will be a very mysterious case that will take a long time to solve. The sound of an engine echoed as I walked further, and a black Corolla was barely visible, lurking in a dark alley. Its 2 headlights were like the eyes of a bloodthirsty tiger, staring directly at me. I ran for my life, with fear and utter panic, driving me to reach my fastest possible speed. The Corolla started moving as well, right behind me. I dashed into a narrow shortcut and then turned left, running for a few more minutes until I finally saw my house. I rummaged through my bag for the keychain, unlocked the door, and rushed inside, shutting it firmly behind me. I collapsed right by the front door, and it was only then that I could finally cry. I felt extremely hopeless at that time. I was listening to a podcast about my own murder case. Was it a dream, or was it real? I became even more agitated when I realized that the car, likely containing the perpetrator, was lingering outside my house. I was home alone. Steve hadn't returned yet. Suddenly, a sound like knocking echoed, startling me as I looked around the dark space with wide eyes. It was the sound from my phone. I hadn't turned off the podcast yet. With my eyes blurred from crying, I trembled as I dialed Steve's number. He said he would be home in just 5 minutes. A few more minutes passed, and there was no sign of anything. The darkness and silence were swallowing me whole. I reopened the podcast on my phone, curious to listen to the end and find out the outcome. When questioned by the police, Steve, the victim's boyfriend, sobbed as he recounted. Kaylee might have left without wanting anyone to know. She complained to me about her grades, family, and relationships. She always showed signs of boredom and lost faith in life, but of course, I encouraged her a lot. But maybe my love wasn't enough for Kaylee to feel safe. I felt like I was coated in a thick layer of glue when I heard that podcast.
Kaylee, I'm home.
The voice of my boyfriend called out to me. I felt the chill run down my spine at that familiar, sweet voice. I stood up, determined to escape no matter the cost. Steve had lied. I had never said the things he reported to the police. My life is great, despite the hardships, but I am enjoying it with all the passion of being 22. I quickly escaped from the house through the kitchen window, running away with my bare feet bleeding.
So, this story I'm about to tell you, I've never forgotten it, even after all these years. I'm Erica, and this scary thing happened to me when I was 10. I was super scared of dogs. Not the cute, fluffy ones you see on Instagram, more like pit bulls, labs, goldens, and dogs like that. They were huge and probably weighed like twice as much as me back then. I was just this skinny little girl. Their eyes were so intense it felt like they could see right through you. My fear wasn't something you could just laugh off. It was deep, paralyzing, so terrifying that it made my skin crawl and my body freeze up. Every time I saw a big dog, my breath would catch and my vision would go blurry. I just stood there, my knees shaking, praying it wouldn't come any closer. That night, I was supposed to have dinner at my best friend Kelly's place. I was planning to stay after dinner for a bit, like until 7 or 8. But Kelly and I were having so much fun, just caught up in cartoons and board games, that by the time I left, it was totally dark outside. The temperature had dropped a lot, and a cold wind was blowing through the quiet suburban street, making my skin crawl. Kelly's house was just one street over from mine, and there was a shortcut. It was this narrow alley with tall walls on both sides and wild bushes growing along the way. I'd walked this way 100 times before, but tonight, it just felt different. The darkness felt like it went on forever, swallowing up the warm light from the street lamps. I walked fast, my heart pounding, trying to ignore the fear creeping up in my chest. I should have listened to that feeling, should have turned back, should have taken the long way home under the familiar yellow light. But I didn't. I just kept walking, sinking deeper into the fear, telling myself I was probably just overthinking it. When I got to the middle of the alley, I heard footsteps behind me, heavy and steady. The guy in front of me was tall, really tall, like a shadow in the dark alley. The weak streetlight only lit up part of his face, but enough for me to see his pale, lifeless skin. He was wearing a black coat, all worn out, covering his body, with just his hands showing. His fingers were long and thin, like dry branches. His face was mostly covered by a hat, but I could still see his mouth. He was smiling, like a creepy grin, almost as if he was enjoying my fear. My stomach dropped, and I remember feeling like my legs were stuck to the ground, with every part of me screaming to run. In front of me was this tall figure, barely lit, getting closer with each step, and the sound was echoing off the walls of the narrow alley. Panic hit me. I tried to scream, but my throat was tight, and no sound would come out. I couldn't move. My whole body was shaking as the guy got closer, and his hand just barely touched my shoulder. I can still remember how cold his fingers felt, and how my skin just prickled with pure fear. "It's dangerous to be out here alone at night, little girl. You'll run into pervs, kidnappers, like me." He laughed, loud and creepy. My legs went weak, and I just started crying, my heart hurting so bad. I felt like I was facing a monster, not a person. My whole body was shaking. My limbs felt numb, but I couldn't look away from him. The creep grabbed both my hands and yanked me closer to him. Before I could even react, he leaned in close to my ear, gritted his teeth, and told me if I still wanted to go home, I couldn't make a sound. A 10-year-old girl back then could only bite her lips and nod, trying to be quiet. Then I heard a loud roar, like it came from deep inside. I looked around to see where the sound came from, and there they were, 2 big dogs right at the entrance of the alley. They were feral dogs, fur all messy, ribs showing under their skin. I was facing 2 horrors at once, and it felt like my mind and heart were going to explode from all the pressure. The dogs' eyes were locked on me and the guy, their lips pulled back, showing off sharp, shiny teeth. Did they think their territory was being invaded or something? They moved fast, and before I knew it, they were on the guy. He screamed, this high-pitched, freaked-out scream, and started backing away, trying to shove them off. The dogs wouldn't back off, biting and growling, and their growls just got scarier in the alley. I saw my chance. My body finally moved, and I took off running. I ran faster than I ever had, not stopping until I got to my front door. My hands were shaking so bad, it took me 3 tries to turn the doorknob. The rest was just a blur, the rushed voices of my parents, the police, the ambulance. I remember sitting in the hospital, a blanket around my shoulders, still too stunned to talk. My parents told me the dogs chased the guy off, and they probably saved my life. The creep was badly hurt, with deep bites, some of them in pretty bad spots. He was getting treated and would have to go to court, facing the right sentence once he healed up. According to my parents, they'd been feeding the dogs for the past few months. So those dogs protected me, not because they were feral or dangerous, but because they were grateful, smart, and brave. That night changed everything for me. Even though I was still scared, I couldn't deny that deep down I felt thankful and loved them. My quiet little heroes who showed up just in time to save me. I am Mike, the youngest in a family with 3 brothers. 10 years ago, when I was 8 years old, my family moved to Forest Hills because my father was transferred for work. The new house was located in a peaceful, spacious, and quieter area. I felt quite comfortable and tried to adjust to the new environment, while my 2 older brothers took more time to get used to it. What fascinated my 2 brothers and me the most was the treehouse, which was located down a dirt path behind our house. It was a simple wooden house, looking like it had been built quite some time ago. The grayish silver tiled roof, although partially decayed from the rain and sun, still maintained its structure. In the faint light of the setting sun, it looked like a silent ghost, exuding a sense of loneliness. After learning that the treehouse had no owner, my 2 brothers and I were incredibly excited. The way up to the treehouse was not easy. A makeshift wooden ladder was hastily tied to the trunk, with each wooden step worn down over the years. The space was only big enough for 2 people, so my 2 brothers and I would take turns going in to play, and I would always be the last one. Inside the house, there was no dust or the musty smell of a forgotten place. An old oil lamp was still in the corner of the room, and a crooked wooden shelf held a few books. I hadn't even had the chance to explore when I heard my older brother calling up, saying that Mom was calling us back for dinner. I felt a bit of regret, telling myself that I would definitely come back tomorrow. Right after school the next afternoon, I didn't go home, but ran straight to the treehouse. The excitement made my heart beat a little faster, and I left my backpack behind to climb more easily. It seems that the items inside have been slightly moved, probably because my brothers visited again. On the wooden shelf, there was a note with rather messy handwriting, asking a greeting and "What's your name?" I guessed this was a prank from my brothers, so I picked up the pen that had fallen nearby, added my name to the note, and asked for the other person's name in return, leaving it in its original spot. I went over to open the small window, just wide enough for a 7-year-old boy at the time to stick his head and shoulders out and enjoy the view outside. I was filled with a sense of joyful exhilaration, imagining myself living in a fairy tale house. The voice and face of my second brother appeared. He called my name with a mocking tone and attitude, telling me to hurry home before Mom gets angry. I pouted and left, followed by him with his teasing remarks. The next day when I returned, the note from yesterday had been replaced, and the person introduced themselves as Mr. Gummy Candy. The days that followed were filled with regular conversations between me and Mr. Gummy Candy through unique note exchanges. He asked me many different questions. At first, it was questions of concern, like whether I had eaten dinner yet, or how I was adjusting to the new school. I was pretty sure that this was one of my brother's pranks, so I decided to stubbornly see it through to the end to expose them. Gradually, Mr. Gummy Candy's questions no longer felt like the familiar teasing from my two brothers. "Where's your bedroom window located at, kid?" I shivered a little when I saw that note and placed it back in its spot without replying. It didn't stop there. The questions became increasingly creepy. "What does your pajamas smell like?" I felt surrounded by a strange coldness, my mind filled only with questions I didn't want to answer, and a rising sense of fear in my heart. A suffocating feeling rose in my chest, as if the treehouse had turned into a trap, and I, the curious one, had unwittingly walked right into it. It felt as though the space around me suddenly became cramped, and even breathing became difficult. I heard a soft, faint sound coming from inside the house, as if someone had just stepped in behind me. It was just a very small sound, but it was enough to make me jump and turn around, my heart racing wildly. But there was nothing there, no one at all. At that moment, I could clearly feel that the house was no longer a fun place to play. The feeling of terror slowly built up, like a dark shadow closing in on me. I left the pen and the note on the table and quickly ran back home. That evening, I couldn't eat much and couldn't focus on the stories everyone was talking about. My suspicious and probing gaze was fixed on every gesture and expression of my two brothers. That night, it took me quite a while to fall asleep, and what haunted me the most was what awaited me the next morning. As soon as I woke up with sleepy eyes, I looked out the window and sensed that the light of the new day felt strangely different. After a few seconds of becoming more awake, my nerves suddenly shifted into a state of excitement and panic. Countless gummy candies in all sizes and colors were stuck all over the outside of my window. A child would be delighted to see so many candies, but not me, not in that situation. I screamed loudly, rushed out of my room, and ran to the dining table where my parents and two brothers were. I stammered as I questioned my two brothers, asking who Mr. Gummy Candy was. My parents looked at me in surprise, while my brothers laughed mischievously, saying I had just had a nightmare and was talking nonsense. I angrily told them everything that had happened without even pausing to catch my breath. Under the stern gaze of my parents, my two brothers firmly and decisively insisted that they hadn't played any pranks and hadn't been to the treehouse for a week. And so, the stern and angry gaze of my parents turned toward me. While my dad called the police, my mom tried to calm me down. When the police arrived, they searched around the house but found nothing suspicious. However, they advised my family to be cautious, especially with abandoned houses. The police suggested that it could have been a homeless, perverted person who had been watching and teasing me. After confirming once again that the treehouse had no owner, and with the mayor's approval, my parents had someone come to dismantle the treehouse. I felt much lighter, no longer curious about things with unclear origins. For me, it was a terrifying memory I would never forget, a warning that sometimes harmless pranks can open the door to things we never wish to encounter.
"Francis, we have got to get out of here right now," Jeffrey said, very panicked. I groggily woke up, barely able to react, while Jeffrey continued urging me with a voice that sounded on the verge of tears. "Hurry, we don't have much time." "What's going on with you, Jeffrey?" "There's someone in the basement." I struggled to shake off the drowsiness and looked at my friend with a helpless expression. What cabin doesn't have a basement? Maybe the owners had something to do here. No, Francis, no owner would come here at midnight like this. I'm not sure if that's a person or not. It's really big. We have to go now. Jeffrey pulled me up from the bed, and we stepped outside. Manny and Oliver were still grilling in front of the cabin, near the woods. We had a grand party and drank continuously for 6 hours, from the afternoon until evening. Yet those two were still here grilling, while I couldn't remember when I had fallen asleep. Jeffrey kept insisting that we needed to leave quickly, while Manny and Oliver were still happily enjoying their skewers. "Why does no one care about what I'm saying?" Jeffrey said, quite irritated. "We rented this cabin for 2 nights, Jeffrey. Don't you think it would be a waste?" I still had plenty of alcohol in my system, so I couldn't drive, and I didn't want anyone else driving my expensive sports car. Manny had drunk quite a bit, so his words were hard to control. Jeffrey declared that he would leave alone, not even bothering to pack his things. Oliver and I tried to stop him, but we couldn't. After Jeffrey left, the 3 of us decided to go down to the basement to check things out. It turned out that this cabin had such a large basement. The light down there wasn't meant to illuminate everything. It only added to the mysterious and gloomy atmosphere. We turned on the flashlight on our phones and looked around. After walking for a while, all 3 of us jumped when we saw the silhouettes of 2 men standing across from each other. Hello? The 2 men didn't respond, standing still and staring at us. We slowly approached, feeling confident that we were 3 while the others were only 2. And then Manny burst into laughter when he realized that the 2 figures were just 2 statues. So Jeffrey was mistaken. He's really such a coward, Oliver said teasingly, with a hint of helplessness. We turned to leave, but after taking a few steps, a noise echoed, causing all 3 of us to stop and look. We looked at each other with expressions of doubt and fear. Looking back, we saw another dark shadow appearing between the 2 statues. It had a shape that was both similar to and unlike a human. The thing had to be over 6 feet, with an extremely long neck, a skinny body, and eyes that gradually brightened, illuminating the 2 statues in front more clearly. Perhaps this is the truly frightening thing that Jeffrey had seen. It was human corpses that were dried up, shriveled, and filled with terror. We ran off screaming in terror, desperately clinging to each other, stumbling many times. After getting out of the basement and leaving the cabin, we realized that at some point we had lost Oliver without noticing. Manny immediately jumped into his sports car and yelled frantically, demanding that I get in the car right away. "My laptop, please, Manny, just 1 minute." I rushed into the room, grabbed the laptop from the bed, and ran back out. Manny was still waiting. "What about Oliver? Call the police quickly." We quickly drove away, and after getting a fair distance, I pulled out my phone to call Jeffrey after calling the police, but he didn't answer. We couldn't reach Oliver either, and we returned to the city without saying a word. Manny couldn't even remember the way back. The police found 2 bodies in the basement, just as we had reported. But the tall creature was not found, and it was unclear whether they believed what we had described, especially with the strong smell of alcohol on our breath. Interestingly, Jeffrey and Oliver were not found, and there was no information about the owner of the cabin we had rented. Manny and I assisted the police extensively, but all our efforts were in vain. I researched all the information in articles about the forest where we had camped. Many people shared their experiences about a horrifying creature called the Skinwalker. It had the exact same characteristics as the creature I had seen in the basement.
you.